Happy New Year! Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is the talk. We are only going to cover Iden Versio Kit, developer insights, and the gearing that I did during the Grand Arena period. It was fairly limited. Iden Versio was a nice surprise. I didn't think we'd be getting any additional game characters. I thought that portion of the marquee releases was over, so this is a nice way to start out the new year. With her kit, we're going to break this down the way that I like to do, where we just focus in on the key terms, extract that away from all the extraneous information that is a bit distracting, so that we can start speculating on mods, ability order, and what I think about prioritizing her or her Omicron. We're not going to do it the way that we sometimes do, where I build a graphic with it to really accentuate that. I want to be a little bit quicker today. So first up, we've got the basic take them down. This is damage to the target. If no allies have a leader tag, then she's going to deal damage 2 more times. And if those are crits, she's going to recover health and protection. So it just shows that with the correct allies, she's going to be getting additional health and protection, because that could be potentially up to 15% health and protection if those are 3 crits. First special here, push forward. That's an AoE damage and AoE inflict vulnerable. That is a debuff I always have to remind myself on, which just guarantees a critical hit if they have the debuff and the character is able to crit. Then for the target, dispel buffs, inflict healing immunity, and stun them. That portion's not an AoE. This special can also not be resisted by rebels. If you have the correct allies, and this is something we're not going to emphasize every time I read this, because it applies to basically every ability. If she has the right allies, mass assist, dealing 20% damage. This, I think, is going to be what I think should be the first ability used. Second special, Weaken Grieve later. This is cleanse all allies. Verso, she's going to gain protection up 100%, and her allies are going to gain 50% protection up, and all allies are going to recover protection. So protection up is the purple portion of the protection. The normal protection is the white. If no other allies have the leader tag, they're going to gain the buff We Adapt or Die. Think of this like Mechanic Savvy on Quill, or how Quill gives Mechanic Savvy to other Scoundrel or droids. It's going to be that type of buff. At least that's what I'm thinking. We Adapt or Die is going to be giving crit chance, offense, and speed, and revive with 70% health if they're defeated. I'm assuming that means defeated while they have that buff. That's how Mechanic Savvy works. What's nice here, though, is the next portion. If the buff is dispelled, then the trooper is going to recover health and gain turn meter. That is really powerful and is going to be really nice, where losing Mechanic Savvy just is annoying and prevents you from doing some of the things that you want. Where with a We Adapt or Die, it's good if you have it, it's good if you lose it. That's a great addition. I like that mechanic to her kit in addition to the game. Leadership ability is the Omicron ability. Without the Omicron, trooper allies gain crit chance, offense, and speed. If they're the correct trooper allies, then whenever they attack out of turn, they are going to gain stacking offense until the end of the counter. At the start of the encounter, they're gaining crit damage up. They're going to have a guaranteed counter chance. And while enemies have that debuff vulnerable, those enemies are going to have a reduced speed. So already we're seeing some of the synergies where you have that guaranteed counter, which is going to just reinforce the attacking out of turn, which is going to reinforce the stacking offense. And here is a big reason why Range Trooper is going to make a lot of sense on this team. And the more that I think about it, the more I'm convinced that range needs to be here. The Omicron adds to the leadership if it's the correct trooper allies, max health and max protection, and whenever the enemy attacks out of turn, trooper allies are going to recover health and protection and gain turn meter. So that's giving to the Versio squad a version of the Veer's Zeta in a way, except it's being provided by the opponent's synergy and not by the allies' synergy. So it's going to be important who you bring this team up against, which makes them an offensive-only squad. They fall apart on defense. That's not how they're going to be used. And without explicitly saying it, it's saying you need to use them up against rebels, because rebels do a lot of attacks out of turn, and it synergizes more with that first special. So it's going to definitely work against Mon Mothma, and is specifically designed up against Mon Mothma, since she doesn't do a ton of damage, but it should work against certain CLS teams. She might not be able to punch up a ton, but she's going to be able to punch up pretty well. CLS is just going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with because of the extra damage that CLS does. Mon Mothma has a lot of damage reduction in her kit, which makes it a little bit easier for Versio to stand up against her with that shared health, and not shared health, but additional max health and max protection. So I'm going to be interested to see how much of this team can punch up. The unique, I was going to say second unique, but this is the first unique. First in, last out. If it's the right trooper allies, then Versio is going to gain 100% turn meter at the start of the encounter, and when she's defeated, she's going to revive with 100% health and protection if there's other troopers there, which basically means she can't be taken out until everyone else. So she's the last one to attack. And while she has protection up, she's going to gain potency. And while she's active, trooper allies are going to have even more offense. So there's, with the leadership, with the We Adapt or Die buff, and with this unique, there's a ton of added offense to this team, which is going to make a lot of these trooper teams work a lot better than they otherwise would have. And they should be able to punch up a lot, which means I think she's probably going to be 3-star viable. I think that Omicron sounds great. It means she's going to be a pretty big priority for me early on, because she's going to keep reviving until everyone else is taken out. Any weaknesses she has at 3 stars should be able to be overcome. With this portion here about Iden gaining 100% turn meter at the start of the encounter, what that says to me is I think we're going to want to start with the first special here, where she is going to inflict that debuff vulnerable and do a mass assist. So that's going to, from the start of the turn, she's going to control the field a little bit by putting a stun on somebody that you're going to want to have stunned. Then with that mass assist from the leadership, there's going to be a bunch of stacking offense. And because of that debuff, you're going to be guaranteed that they have, that crits happen, and they're going to have reduced speed. And from those crits, Versio is going to have a much easier time whenever she assists to recover health and protection. From there, you can use the second special, where she'll throw up that buff, We Adapt or Die, and add even more offense and speed. And if any cleansing happens, then they'll also have that opportunity to gain even more turn meter. So I think she has a straightforward kit. There's a lot of stuff going on, but most of it is the allies that she's put with. It's going to add a ton of viability to these troopers that right now we are for the most part not using. Developer insights, I'd like to look at these. Sometimes there's little hints. There's not a lot here. The one thing is they just like hammer your head with the point that this team works well against rebel teams, even pointed out again with the Omicron ability. The rest of it was already pretty apparent when you read through the kit. The other thing that's interesting here is they suggest 2 squads. CG never just gives us squads, so I highly doubt that these are going to be the squads that we end up using. One Stormtrooper is not shown in either of these squads. I actually really like Stormtrooper these days. He works pretty great with Piet. Stark is a candidate to move down to squad 2 for when he doesn't have a leadership, but he also throws buffs around, which helps ranged trooper and those assists. Shore Trooper is one I think is someone who could fall out, and maybe it's Stormtrooper, maybe Magma Trooper falls down, but maybe Magma has a little bit of nice stuff with the turn meter manipulation. So Magma Trooper could be adding to that speed reduction that is already in Versio's kit, but I'm not seeing that these are going to be the teams available. What I do think is interesting is the likelihood that we're going to see additional troopers. Like Scout Trooper is just looming, and I really think we are going to see Scout Trooper this year in something either related to Book of Boba Fett or Mando Season 2 characters coming into the game. So Scout Trooper would create a Imperial Remnant squad, which means maybe this Veers squad falls asleep, but Scout Trooper would have to be pretty good to discourage the use of how that Veers squad is working. But I think CG wants us to use certain characters in certain ways, and I don't know if they intended for Gideon to fall into a Veers squad. I think that was probably something they were surprised by, that we as a community shifted into just going with an all-support trooper squad. So that's something I'm just having in the back of my head. We may need an additional 1 or 2 troopers. I don't really know who they would be, but those are things I'm thinking about. This is all the gearing I did on my roster December 21st during the Grand Arena season. So Chopper we take up to gear 11. He was at gear 10 and close and helps the ship. Vandor I look at, I held off. Dash here, I use crystals in shipments to take him to 4 stars and put that Zeta on. He is better with the Zeta, but it's not required. He's very usable at 3 stars, no Zeta. Even better at 3 stars with the Zeta. Sith Assassin was the last Sith that I was waiting on. I like the Sith, wanted to finish out that squad. Want to test her out, and I want to use that ship. I'm also anticipating something with the Sith fleet in the next year. Mara Jade, throw the Zetas on. She does need those Zetas. She's much better with them and very usable at 3 stars. We'll definitely be using crystals and shipments to take her to 4 stars. That should probably be happening this week. Kyle Katarn also needs the Zeta, very usable at 3 stars. The Mon Mothma team, I did not notice a lot of improvement without the Zeta, but it has been better with it. Darth Talon, you can probably hold off on the Zeta. I put it on, but I didn't notice a lot of difference. The shared stats are really what's nice about her. Omicron, seems necessary. I'm holding off on it because I wanted to have one banked in case something like Verso happened. Greedo, my favorite character as a kid. Surprised he's the last bounty hunter I'm taking to Gear 11, but that's how it is. I also really like Tuskens when I was a kid. Other things we are looking at here during this gearing period. I look at Bista and I hold off. Maul, I believe. Yeah, we take Maul up to Relics. I tested Maul out at Gear 11, Gear 12, and at Relics. He's usable at all levels. Much better at Relics, obviously. I think he needs to be high Relics, partly because that second special doesn't really take Fervent Rush, doesn't really take anyone out at low Relics, or at least reliably doesn't. And you want it to take somebody out in order to get that that bonus, the stacks of the Anguish. Yeah, that's all the gearing I did that week and during the Grand Arena period. I was traveling for the rest of it and just decided to forget it. We weren't going to do any additional gearing between Grand Arena rounds. We're going to call it there for this video. Really excited for Verso, and Book of Boba Fett has been pretty good so far, and really hope to see a number of those characters in the game soon. Perhaps we'll talk about that in a video shortly. Be safe out there, everyone. Be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.